The Abysmal Womb is the debut full-length album from Moondark, an Avesta Sweden-based quintet and a death doom metal band in general. This band they started in an interesting way. It was a side project, sort of excess of slower, maybe sludge metal influenced music that at the time I think they remarked as being influenced by the early Crypts of Kerberos work, in the sense that they were going for twisted riffs but also death doom at the time. These were folks who were from bands like lesser known demo era bands like Beyond, better known groups like Uncanny and Interment, who kind of had their returns, or they've been well documented over the years, as well as maybe lesser known bands like Fulmination and Delamort later on. This general sound at the time might have been influenced maybe a little bit by Abhorrence or Autopsy or Eternal Darkness and Gormit nearby. It kind of fits in that space when we get to their first demo, which was released in 1993. The band was over pretty soon after that. It was kind of a quick one-off in between a lot of other ideas kind of spilling out from the band. That demo eventually became known as the Shadow Path. When it was released in different bootlegs over the years, it was eventually officially released, and it's almost album length. It is sharp throughout. It's very well formed, and it sounds great. It's always sounded great in every version of it that I've heard, and it's a pretty well-known demo for people who dig through that kind of thing and have specific interest in the unique side of Swedish death metal in the 90s, the early 90s. So the Shadow Path created something that was never iterated upon, and it was something that was kind of left in the past, essentially, and they've tried to revive it here more recently. I think in 2014 they had the reissues happen, and the band played some shows, I think, and so they brought in a new vocalist, some new members, and they've been working on a record for at least a few years now. I don't know the full story, but we'll get to a clip here, show you what this band sounds like now and how they followed up the Shadow Path with this. So the only way they're going to bring back a band, and this is based off what the bands that they've revived in the past, such as Interment for a couple of albums, as well as Uncanny for reissues and whatnot. They're going to do it with some authenticity, and generally it shouldn't be a surprise that they brought back this band sounding the way that they did in the past, but obviously bolstered to sound like a modern death metal record, in the sense that it is well produced, it is a dynamic recording, it is crisp in everything that it presents, and the darkness and the unique vibrancy of their sound and the record, all of that comes from their performances, their songwriting, and not scuffed production values or anything like that. They're not trying to sound ratty or distorted by time, so much as it's a continuation of that sound that still feels authentic as it would have back in 1993. And so that's a unique enough thing to just in general that sells the album to me. It sounds like a record that should have come out in probably 1994. It doesn't really touch upon a lot of death and roll like it might have back at that time, but in general this sounds like the album that should have followed the demo tape. And in that sense, they haven't brought back songs from the past. This is all new material, but it definitely has the Moondark sound, however you'd know it. And I think that they've done well to design this album in terms of its sound, to sound powerful, sound like it has a lot of depth. It almost has the heaviness of a more recent Crypts album, and it creeps along in a way that is still heavy. It's still death metal, and it's not all pure atmosphere. So it feels like an old school death metal record for today, and it sounds particularly dark and of the time where that it inspired it. So that's the biggest endorsement I can give to a record of this type. It is the reason to return is to sound like this, and they haven't bastardized it or made it commercial or strange or out of touch with what Moondark was to begin with, and that's an achievement. And the fact that it's a good record, it's a great record, it's a riff album, it's got a ton of great songs. There's huge grooves all over this thing. I think if you're a fan of early sludge metal and how that was riff oriented, you'll appreciate the way that they bring in doom as something a little bit more aggressive than that might speak to today, and that keeps the record active and kind of pushing through its songs in a way that's just it's redeeming. It's a great record. I would say it's a fantastic record. It's among the best of the year, and certainly up there on top of the list of the best of December. I was completely surprised that this was as good as it was. I was expecting something decent based on who was playing on this record, but it's actually a fine record to sit back and listen to. Completely well made. Production values are and just incredible in the way that it sounds, and the louder you turn it up, the better it sounds, which is always a good sign. Check it out for yourself. That's a very high recommendation for me. Don't overlook this one just because it was late in the year last year. And go ahead and read my review for more of my thoughts in depth.
The obnoxious